This is Hard Parking, brought to you by Right Honda and Right Toyota out of Scottsdale, Arizona. I'm your host, Jhae Pfenning, recording from my home studio here in Gilbert, Arizona. It is Mother's Day weekend, but today's episode, we're not going to cover Mother's Day. We're going to save that for next week because I traveled to my home away from home, which is at the warehouse, and sat down with Josh Bryan. Josh invented an awesome lighting system, an overhead lighting system called InflateAlite. He also has an incredible story, humble beginnings. You're not going to want to miss it. All that and more coming up after this word from Arcus Foundry. If you run a business and you're tired of juggling tools, chasing logins, and constantly feeling like the tech side of things is heavier than it should be, this might hit close to home. That tech fatigue usually shows up as an outdated website, reviews slipping through the cracks, missed calls when you're busy, or social media that's always on the back burner. Most business owners know something's off, but fixing it feels like a bigger project than they have time for. SparkForge exists to take that weight off. It handles the tech behind the scenes, helps clean up how your business shows up online, makes sure calls and messages don't get mixed, keeps reviews from slipping through the cracks, and wrangles social marketing so you don't disappear for weeks. If you're curious, there's a short discovery session, and it comes with 90 days free to actually see if it makes things easier. No pitch, no pressure, just a real conversation about what's working, what's broken, and what you can simplify. So head over to getsparkforge.ai/hardparking to get started. So we're here at the warehouse with Josh Bryan.
Yes.
I invented an InflateAlite, and we're actually underneath the light. So this is a time that I don't have to bring anything other than the cameras.
Yes.
Tell us about the InflateAlite.
Yeah, you bet. So, like you said, we're under one right now, a one that would be oversized typically for this application, right? This is designed to shoot cars. For this type of application, probably our 12 by 12 would be better. But anyway, it's a light bank, produces really nice diffused light. And our big difference between us and a traditional, like a Chimera or something like that, is the quick setup, the lightweight, and gives you flexibility that you didn't have in a traditional product.
So why InflateAlite?
Why did I develop it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
What's the InflateAlite story?
Yeah, so we'll get back into my background. I'm an automotive, commercial automotive car photographer. And over the years, I built several studios, and which was great. You know, you bring the car in, you shoot it. It doesn't matter what the weather's doing, what time of day it is, all that sort of thing. But I started thinking this would be really cool if I could light a car or anything for that matter anywhere and have it look like it was in the studio. Like, what if you could light a car at sunset with a mountain range in the background, or the ocean, or the city, or who knows, right? And so that was the beginnings of InflateAlite. So I originally built a non-inflatable version, just basically an aluminum frame, hung it off a boom on a van for proof of concept, and it worked great. You know, I went out, I think the first shoot I ever did, this was probably 4 years ago, was in an aircraft museum on the Oregon coast. And I had this belly tanker. And do you know what a belly tanker is?
I don't.
So these were a race car that were built out of like World War II drop tanks for World War II aircraft. So they would have these tanks that look kind of like a bomb, right? And the idea is they'd fill the tanks with fuel. They would use the fuel out of there first, and they would drop this tank. It was basically something that could just be gotten rid of so you didn't have the drag and the weight, right? So after World War II, hot rod guys got these and they were like, hey, these look pretty aerodynamic, right? Let's put wheels on them, an engine in them, and they made these little race cars. And you'd see them at like Bonneville and other places, usually for like top speed sort of stuff, not so much like round racing or road racing or anything like that. So anyway, back up to this, I had this really cool belly tanker that was gonna go up to auction, and I thought what better place to do it would be at this, aircraft museum. So we went out there, we set it up, set up the boom, and the prototype essentially, and it was really cool. We had this custom fabricated race car out of aircraft parts, and then an actual aircraft in the background. So that was the beginning. And so I used it, and it worked great. Just wasn't very convenient.
Sure.
Having to set up this frame.
Right.
We had no control over the light because I just had lights hanging over the top of it. So any spill would just spill out. Like if we were shooting in here, the wall would be lit up, the ceiling would be lit up. You get reflections all over the place. So I did a commercial job for these guys that were building pickup truck canopies. They're called inflatable pickup truck canopies. They're made out of this material called drop stitch, and it was super tough, and you only had to put like 6 or 7 pounds in. It was rigid enough to like stand on the top of the canopy, right? And I was really intrigued on this shoot. So I said their engineer was on the project, and I said, hey, like how big could you make something out of this material? And I said, I don't know, how big do you want to go? And I'm like, I don't know, 12 feet long, 24 feet wide. He's like, oh, I see what you want to do. So I actually worked out a deal with these guys because they were kind of getting started at the time and didn't have big budget. Mm-hmm. I didn't have big budget for R&D, that he would help me with the design side, the engineering side, and the factory they were using to like build the prototype. And so that's what we did. We traded it out. We built the first one. It worked great. And then it was like, okay, now we have to patent it for this application. And we have to work out, the bits and pieces to make it so it's commercially viable so anyone can use it. And that took, roughly 1.5 years probably to do that, to get to where we're at today, which is a 12-foot by 24-foot light bank, a 12-foot by 12-foot light bank, and then a 12 by 12 butterfly and an 8 by 8 butterfly. And the difference between a butterfly and a light bank is the butterfly is literally just a frame that holds the material, and you can put whatever light source you want behind it. You could even use it outside to like cut the sun down and make it not so bright. Whereas a light bank is actually enclosed and that you can put the light source inside it. So it can turn into a complete unit. And you don't have to worry about spill and the light getting everywhere, and you've got mounts for lights and stuff like that in there too. So there's 2 different products, 2 different uses, although they could cross over in theory, depending on what you're doing, or be used in conjunction with each other.
Rebecca, was that a butterfly that you guys were using here before then? So I think that was like
Was it on a roller stand?
I believe so.
And it was like vertical?
Yeah, it was like
that
on the
been
floor.
A butterfly.
Yeah, the 2 products is the overhead of the butterfly. So if it wasn't hung from the ceiling, it's a butterfly.
Okay.
Although you could hang a butterfly from the ceiling if you wanted to.
I've seen a butterfly then. I've seen one in action.
Yeah, yeah. Really common on movie sets. And
he has the B-flat that's coming out that we may have used during the launch event.
Probably did, yeah.
So how did you get involved in shooting? This was all way before the InflateAlite.
It was all way before the InflateAlite, correct. So I guess a little bit of
who are you?
Yeah, a little bit of history. I mean,
how did we get here?
We got to go way back. We got to go way back,
time.
Right?
Let's do it.
To little baby Josh, I guess. So essentially, I've got kind of an interesting background. I was born in the U.S., but when I was 6 years old, moved overseas to Indonesia. My dad was an aircraft mechanic for a mission organization. They essentially flew people to the hospital in remote places where there's no access. So, I spent a lot of time in Borneo, or Kalimantan now, as you would call it, and New Guinea, Papua.
Okay.
And in the interior of those islands, these are great big islands, right? At the time, in the 80s, there was no infrastructure. Mm-hmm. So if you got bit by a snake, or having trouble in childbirth, or in some sort of accident, the only hospitals essentially were typically on the coast where there was more infrastructure. So to get from the interior out to there, you either walked, or if there was a river, took a boat. And so it was either days or weeks, essentially, to get. And so you can imagine that didn't work very well.
Were you a careful child?
Not at all. Not at all. We had airplanes.
Oh, we got this. Don't worry.
Yeah. So my dad took care of this fleet of aircraft, and it was a big fleet. Helicopters, fixed wing. So he was in charge of that and kept these airplanes in the air. A lot of times you couldn't get parts for them. The aircraft were older. There was laws governing how many new aircraft you could bring in the country and things like that. Anyway, and then my mom was a photographer. Self-taught. She did a lot of portraits and landscapes and things like that. So I had an interesting background as far as like my dad, mechanic, very strong technically. My mom, photographer. And then I grew up with no TV, no electricity during the day. Just in the evening, at least for the first 5 or 6 years that we were over there. When we moved to New Guinea, we lived on the coast, not the interior. And so we had roads and electricity 24 hours a day and that sort of thing. But growing up like that, I think it was different than a lot of people experience, obviously. I was 17 when we moved back to the States, so between my junior and senior year. But essentially you couldn't go to the store and buy anything. So you had to, yeah.
Right.
So if you wanted something, you essentially had to somehow create it, build it. And so that's what I grew up with. So fast forward, moved to the States. I really wanted to be a pilot because I grew up with aircraft and stuff like that. But I got distracted by motorcycles. Got back to the States, started racing motorcycles, and had a motorcycle.
So did you have one back then? Did you get around on that?
Yes,
okay,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Cars were very few and far between
Right.
and very expensive.
I find a lot of these other countries that people visit, just in general outside the United States, are just motorcycles everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the affordability.
Yeah.
Right? It's so much less expensive, especially with
Easier
the
to
type
travel
of bikes
too sometimes.
that we used were like small displacement, very inexpensive, nothing fancy. Nothing bigger than like 200 cc's
Right.
essentially, at least back then. So I
Makes sense.
got into motorcycles and really enjoyed them, learned how to work on them. My dad and I built some bikes, So when I moved back to the States, started with that, went to work at a motorcycle shop, started road racing motorcycles.
A little different.
Yes, totally different. And then had my own motorcycle shop for many years. And so I was essentially racing motorcycles, had a motorcycle shop, and then later the motorcycle tire distributorship for Pirelli for the basically everything west of the Mississippi. And so I was heavily involved in the motorcycle road racing scene, both racing and doing the race tire thing. And that was spanned from basically 1993 until 2009. And then in 2009, there's a lot of things that happened in 2009. I was getting too old to race professionally. Definitely at the end of my shelf life, so to speak. And the economy obviously took a huge hit around that time. And a lot of the money I made was from selling the tires, and a lot of the recreational racers who were my biggest clients in that weren't racing bikes at that time because there was no money. So I kind of was at it. I didn't know what to do. And I went to work for a friend of mine that he's my biggest client actually. People would probably know him best as 911R and Bring a Trailer, Matt Crandall. He had a little car store, was doing kind of a lot of regular stuff, but some kind of exotic stuff as well. I went to work for him just selling cars. And then after about a year of that, I realized, hey, you know what? Cars are, starting to be promoted and advertised more on the internet. Things are really changing.
Everything's ramping up.
There's a call for better photos. Picked up a camera and it came pretty naturally. Completely self-taught. I had no, official schooling or anything like that.
YouTube wasn't there.
Not really.
Not really.
Not really. I guess not. Right?
Yeah.
And so I just started taking pictures of cars, and one thing led to another. And I want to say it was a year or two after that I built my first studio, and I had no idea what I was doing. No clue. Had no budget, so I built my own light. My first light was literally I used an actual parachute for the scrim, for the diffusion.
Yeah.
And fluorescent lighting tubes. I didn't know anything about strobes, and it was in this old building that was kind of it had been this bootleg rave, and it had black carpet on the walls.
That's about
and
right.
It was all blacked out, and it actually worked really, really good for a studio. It was just luck, right? And I built that one. That was the first studio I built. And then a few years later, I built different lights in there and kind of learned how to do lighting, that sort of thing. And then moved to a bigger space, different space, started using strobes, building a more correct light, figuring out how that worked and how to shoot in the studio and all that stuff. And then finally built a third studio. And that's when InflateAlite kind of came around, that the ideas for it, being able to take it mobile, and so that's kind of the backstory on it. That's the backstory on how I got started in photography.
Is it a system that beyond your use, you're marketing out so people can purchase all these InflateAlites? Along your journey, have people approached you and asked you, how did you do this? How did you do that? It's like, because you're so self-taught in a lot of things.
Right.
Is it hard to be like, hey, let me show you how to do my craft? Because one day, we're all part of this big photography, videography journey, but we're friends, but we're also kind of competitive in the same space.
Sure.
It's like, where's your mindset with that? Because I've known friends that, like, yeah, I'll help anybody, but I have other good friends that are like, well, I will to a certain extent because I don't want them taking food off my plate.
Absolutely. That's a really good question, actually. Really good question. And my view on that has shifted over the years for a long time. I would say up until maybe the last 3 or 4 years, I was like very secretive because I'd spent a decade or more learning these things. And a lot of the stuff isn't stuff that even today you can go on YouTube and learn. Not with big lighting.
Sure, yeah.
And doing it correctly. And a lot of people are very guarded about it. And I get it, for sure, because there is that fear, right? I think at some point I realized, like, look, just because you have Max Verstappen's F1 car does not mean you can go win an F1 race. Just like when I was racing motorbikes, just because you had Valentino Rossi's or Marc Marquez's MotoGP bike did not mean that you were going to win. Do you need that to win? Yes. You have to have the right equipment to win. But just having that right equipment does not guarantee you that, and 99.9% of people can't anyway, right? So having the right equipment helps, but it still takes that innate ability to be able to do that. And so I became less fearful of sharing the knowledge. And still, I mean, this is a business for me. This is how I make my living.
Yep.
And I like to be able to make a good living. That's one thing on the photography side. I've never sold myself short on that. If, I see a lot of guys doing stuff for cheap, I would just rather not do it.
Yeah.
I'd rather have a few clients that pay me, what I'm worth, which is on the very top end in this market, or not do it. And what's weird is when I came to that realization, I got busier than I'd ever been. It was almost like when I doubled my fees, people wanted it more. It was this really strange thing. So, nowadays, every week I get emails and phone calls. I'm like, not that I don't want to do it, but I just can't. I don't have the bandwidth because I'm doing InflateAlite. I'm still doing the image engine, which is my photography business. So anyway, to back up to the sharing of the information, I'm really open with people to a certain degree. When it comes to another business that is trying to build out a lighting system, then I'm happy to share that information, but it comes at a fee.
Right.
So if it's an instance, like I was just in Miami, looking at a space we're going to put 2 lights in, and essentially their ceilings are too low to be able to use an off-the-shelf unit that we build. And so I'm going to build them a custom unit. Actually, their contractors are going to build it, and I'm going to direct it. And so that's a consulting fee. I'm not going to just give them that information. Because again, now it's been, 17 years that I've spent building this up, and they're going to use it to make money. And so I think that's fair. Right?
100%, yeah.
So, but if just somebody comes up to me, on a shoot or something, I'm very, very open with the information.
Yeah, and that kind of goes aligned with some of the stuff I've heard over the years with anything, right? It's like, you can buy, for this podcast, you can buy the best microphones,
Sure.
you can buy what you think is the best camera, you can buy all the name brand stuff, the mics you see Joe Rogan using or all those guys. But unless you know what to do with it, if you studied it, if you really honed it in, then it doesn't really mean anything. And you always hear people say it's not the equipment, it's the person behind the camera a lot of times. Case in point, I've had these basically beginner, I call them, entry level cameras and your fine tuning is how we got the settings for today. Because I'm sitting there like, I mean, I don't know, and I've been doing this for a couple of years.
Right.
But you're a professional.
Yeah.
And so that's the type of the knowledge and the assistance I think that people should be able to at least expect from somebody that has that. But you know, the trade secrets and things, because it's your bread and your butter.
Totally.
I want to kind of go back and double click in when you first get here and you start the motorcycle racing and doing all that stuff, because I think, well, I know a lot of people on bikes, that's kind of like their dream. They want to get to that.
Sure.
And a lot of hard work.
Yes.
You know, and you went through that short as far as a kind of like bullet points to how we got here today.
Right.
But what was do you remember what it was like coming back here and going from like a 125cc studded dirt bike through the trails,
right,
and now you're doing the road bikes?
Yes.
You know, what was that first experience like? And then what really pushed you over the edge to like really wanted to compete in that space, not just do it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, we didn't have anything very fast. We thought it was fast, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
When I came back, you know, I'd sold my motorcycle. I was 17 years old. I'd sold my motorcycle over there. Obviously, I wasn't going back. Came to the States, and I think I was in the States for one day, and I saw this RD 350, which is an old 350 two-stroke. It was old even in 1991 or 92, whenever that was. And it was for sale at a garage sale, like on the street where we were staying. And I bought the thing, you know, for not very much, and fixed it up, got it running, hadn't run in a long time. Sold that, bought this VF 500, a 500 Interceptor, as a lot of people know, which was kind of an entry-level sport bike. Again, it was, you know, probably 6 or 7 years old at the time. And those bikes were known for having some issues with crankshafts. And it was a V4, so it was a pretty complex engine. And I bought the bike with a bad engine. My dad, aircraft mechanic, very technically astute, right? It's like, well, let's just get a crankshaft for this thing and we'll rebuild it. So I remember we went to this motorcycle shop to buy, and it was a wrecking yard, motorcycle wrecking yard. And we're
I
like,
didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, they still have them. But back then it was more common, I would say. We went in and we're talking to the owner, and we're like, yeah, we just want the crank out of this bike. And the guy's like, well, who's going to put this thing in? That's like a really hard motor to build. We're like, yeah, we'll do it. Yeah. And he was blown away, right? So we bought the crank, rebuilt this bike, and that actually ended up going to work for him later. But anyway, back to the bikes. So that was kind of my first real sport bike, right? And I thought it was so cool. And then from there, graduated to a GSX-R 750. And my parents, I don't know what they were thinking. I'm a senior in high school. I had a GSX-R 750, and I worked and I made all my own money. And they're like, hey, it's your money, buy what you want. So the GSX-R 750, an old 5-liter highway patrol, you know, like cop car.
Yeah.
I don't know how I survived, right?
No, I'm just thinking, given the age and like kids in general, but especially guys,
right?
You give them something with a lot of speed and a lot of power, anywhere between the age of 18 and 23, and it's a crapshoot. If they make it.
I never wrecked any of it.
That's amazing.
Never ever. Then the GSX-R 1000 turned into an FCR 1000, which at the time was like a big boy bike, right? It was like 130 horse, which was like top of the heap back in the early 90s. And I went to work for this other motorcycle shop right out of high school, and the mechanic there was like, okay, you're going to kill yourself on the street. Like, you should sign up and do a race. And there was a local racing series, OMRA, the Oregon Motorcycle Road Racing Association.
Okay.
At the time I lived in Portland. And so I'm like, okay, great. So I went and I did, they had a novice school, they called it. And I didn't have good tires or anything, like no race tires. So I bought like these takeoffs from one of the established racers of the time, and put them on and raced this 1000, you know, in my first race. And at the time, this is so funny, they would
run
1,000
in my first race.
First race, right? And they raced all the novices together. But what they do is they let the little bikes go first, and they would give you 20 seconds or whatever, right? And then the next wave. So they had like 250s, 600s, and then the open bikes, right? I think I got second that first race, you know, starting from the back. So there's a lot, you know, but I was like, okay, this thing had stock suspension, old takeoffs. I'm like, okay, I'm probably am going to kill myself. So after that, I sold that bike. The mechanic that worked with me that kind of got me going is like, you can see a little potential. He's like, hey, I've got this old FC600. Let's pull it out of the barn, essentially. I'll do all the mechanic on it and help you at the track, and you race. And it was off to the races from there.
You're able to dial it down a little bit.
Dialed it down. I think back then you had to do, it wasn't very many, like 2 or 3 novice races, and then you were up, then you were just kind of thrown to the wolves in the local series. So the next year I went to another, I think it was a 600, and won one of the local series championships, and then got into the more serious stuff after that. But I still didn't really know what I was doing with suspension or anything like that. And I actually went to work as a mechanic for the factory Kawasaki race team, Rob Muzzy back then, and wrenched on this wild Canadian guy. His name was Steve Crevier. He's still around. I was his chassis mechanic in 1994. I did the whole season, like all across the US, did all that. So that was the first time I'd been to a national. I wasn't racing. I still raced locally, but I hadn't done that yet. But it allowed me to learn a lot about the inside of the racing at that level. Learned how to dial in a chassis, learned a lot more about suspension. So then after that, I got a lot more serious about it, and then started doing nationals myself. And by the end of my career, I had a real sponsor and real bikes, and everything was paid for and all that stuff. And I was a really good privateer. I was never gonna run at the front of an AMA Superbike race. With at the time it would be like Eric Bostrom and Nicky Hayden and all that. But I was really good, and some of the more oddball classes, being creative with what bikes to run. Like we ran air-cooled Buells when everyone else was running like liquid-cooled, smaller displacement twins, and we were super successful with that. And it was a really fun time in my life, traveling all over. We go to Daytona in the spring and sometimes in the fall too, depending on which race series. Laguna Seca, Road America, which is my favorite track. Just all over the place. And met people there that I'm still friends with to this day. In fact, a lot of my friends I met racing, and it was a really cool way to see the U.S. and a really cool way to just see the world through a different lens for a long time, for 17 years or however long that was.
See the world through a different lens.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yes. I wasn't even trying that.
I think it's interesting as we're sitting here and you got the cameras and we got the light, and your mother was a photographer, but all the wrenching, all the design, father being an airplane mechanic.
Yes.
And you do it on the motorcycles. Like that connection is there, and it's very interesting, and it just kind of transitioned from working on your own stuff, designing and building, solving your own problems, growing up in a place where there wasn't a lot of tech.
Yes.
And now you're in
pre-internet too. It's not like you could look anything
like
up.
I said, there was no Chris Fix, and there was none of that stuff.
None of that stuff.
And you've been able to carry that forward and not succumb. Like I would imagine you use the current technology obviously to your advantage, not as like a cheating device, whatever that be.
100%. Well, a lot of information that's out there is just wrong too. I mean, they say AI is going to take over the world, and it may. In some way, shape, or form. It may, but I'll tell you what, as wrong as it is about like pretty basic things, it'll be a little while. And the other thing that I'm unconvinced with that is the creative end of things. Like, it is looking at what's been done. Is it ever going to be able to really think outside the box? Because it's trained in a box, right? Mm-hmm. And it's there. Like, I really wonder about that. And I don't know. I'm not, that's not my field.
What do you think it would touch your space other than, I have a lot of photographer friends and they're kind of mixed on this. Because for the potato shooter like myself with like an iPhone, right. My work is how can I make it look good on the gram? Totally. Which heavily compresses everything. So I can just take a photo and be like, hey, AI, do this. And I think that, like, what do you think that's going to fit in? Because you're not a gram shooter. Obviously, you're on the professional level. Mm-hmm. Do you think at the end of the day, they're still going to want they're still going to want that organic human touch
And
for
ideas.
products and ideas.
New ideas, yeah.
Or do you think people are just going to get lazy because
It depends
lazy's scary?
It depends on the industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I'm pretty future-proofed with what I do because 95% of what I do is cars that are going to auction. These aren't new cars.
Mm-hmm.
These are rare, collectible, most of them, some of them are more average, but a lot of them are rare, collectible, old, and condition is super important, right? And as far as I know, there's no way to AI a car to represent its true condition. You know, the rust, the rot chips, the chips in the windshield. Because if you look at my work, I'm very known for pretty photos, right, in the auction space. But there's like 20, maybe 30 pretty photos, and there's 170 photos inside the car, inside the motor compartment, underneath the car, in the trunk, looking at the details of this car, right? So I feel like myself and the guys that are in my space, I think we're pretty safe.
Yeah.
I really do. Could backgrounds be replaced and things like that done? Sure. I think where it's really affecting people is, and commercial professional photographers are like maybe food photographers, clothing photographers, new product, like say a camera, right? That stuff is all pretty easily AI'd, and even clothing now. You know, you can take one model, shoot them, and then put the clothes on them in post. And so I think, you know, shoes, any sort of apparel, I think that could definitely eat into that. I think it depends on what your niche and your specialty is. I feel very safe, but I know a lot of guys that have already lost a lot of work because of it. So yeah, it's gonna really depend. Again, though, I think we get back, and even new car stuff. A lot of those photos that you see for like BMW or Porsche, or whatever. And I know some of the guys that are very successful in that space. Those images are created in such a way. Almost all those are composites. So in other words, there are multiple images being combined. The car might be shot in the studio and then placed outside, you know, in post, or vice versa. They're taking multiple shots to make one image, just completely different from what someone in my space is doing, because we're doing a large volume of photos, a large volume of cars. And so it's a very different sort of thing. But again, even with the new car thing and the composites, I do think the creativity comes into play. And I think at some point, we as humans will be craving something authentic and creative and new. And even if it isn't maybe quote unquote picture perfect, right? Like maybe in the future, maybe a little bit of imperfection will be like desirable, right? I don't know. It's hard to predict.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it in your space from, and I talk about this often from a productivity angle. Maybe you upload your 1,800 photos that you just took and be like, get rid of all the ones that are this, get rid of all the ones that are that. But
there's software out there. There's a really good job with color. Yeah. Especially for like wedding photographers.
Absolutely.
So for me, you know, when I shoot a car and I'm going to deliver a client 200 photos, I've done it so much, especially when I'm using lighting, that I'll probably only shoot 220, 230 photos. There's only going to be 10, 15% max to get thrown away. If you're shooting people at an event, like a wedding, you could take 8,000 photos and only use a couple hundred of them. That's where that AI culling, you know, eyes shut, people not smiling, heads turned the wrong way, it can figure all that out, and it's very, very useful.
Yeah,
it's
productivity.
Not replacing anything.
Correct.
It's just making productivity a lot better.
Yeah.
Right? So,
what do you see the future of InflateAlite?
Well, we've got two distinctly different clientele. So, and the one I didn't really think about, but the most obvious one was automotive use, both in studios and in dealerships that might not even have a specialized studio. They might just have a blank wall, but they still want a good light to be able to shoot their inventory. And this is more of a high-end dealership doing maybe Ferrari or Porsche or high-end used stuff. those are kind of the obvious play, right? And most of these units are not being used outside on a boom like I do, because that does get really expensive. It's probably $200,000 to duplicate the setup, right? And unless you're using that week in, week out, it doesn't pencil.
Right.
If you're using it every week and you're being able to bill for it, it's great. But if you're going to use it twice a year, it doesn't make sense. But in a studio, it totally makes sense. So we've got that, and then the second market that we're seeing that we're actually getting a lot of interest from is the cinema world, and in studios. So we've got one of each size of each product in a studio in Kentucky, Lex Studios. Kentucky's got a very generous tax kickback program for people filming there for both TV and movie. So we've got them in there as rentals, and the grip guys love them because they're super easy to set up. They love them because they're very safe on set. You're not lifting hundreds of pounds of metal over people's heads. You've got 100 pounds in this case of, an inflatable that essentially, even if it fell down on us, it's got enough wind resistance and stuff. It doesn't really do much, right? So, and I like the cinema side because those guys have a lot bigger budget.
They do.
I mean, those guys are used to paying $80,000, $100,000 for a lens.
Yep.
20 grand for a light all ready to go is that's cheap in their book, right? Whereas a car guy is 20, 25 grand by the time you get the lights in and stuff. My God, that's a lot, right?
Yeah.
So we're really trying to branch out into that. And in fact, this weekend, there's one of the smaller butterflies being used on a commercial shoot in Dallas with I can't say who it is, but a very well-known director out of the UK. And so that's the first time I've really had one of our products in front of someone really well known, right? So I'd be very curious to get the feedback from that. So those are essentially our two markets. We've got our automotive, and by automotive, it could be car, motorcycle, anything in that space. And then we've got more the cinema side of things.
Final question. Could you ever have imagined getting to this point? I know there's a lot more to go.
Right.
But I would say this is fantastic. Your entire story is fantastic. Going from the dirt bikes, right? And then going in the jungle, yes.
Straight up jungle,
to bike racing in the States, to doing this and having product that can go on commercial shoots and studios and things like that. 15 years ago.
Not even 5 years ago. I'd have to look back in my phone, but I think the very first, that belly tanker that we shot in that museum, I want to say that was probably 2022, maybe end of 22, something like that. So it's been a really fast progression.
Not linear.
No, and you just never know.
Yeah.
You just never know. You can meet someone today and have a conversation with them that could completely change the course of your life, right?
Yep, absolutely.
You just don't know. And I think, and this is what I tell guys that I'm working with as far as coaching and things like that for photography, is the butterfly effect is huge, right? Something you do right now, how you answer the phone, this instance, when that unknown number calls you, it's probably some sort of spam, but it could be a big director, right?
Yeah.
Right? That's hey, I saw this and I want to. Those little things that you do that put that action into motion are really important. So it's really important, and something that I've always done since the very beginning of my photo career was I always put my best foot forward. I always delivered the best product that I possibly could within that time constraint, that budget, whatever it is, because you don't have forever to fiddle with something, right? But you can certainly do your very best with the tools you've got. And so I've been very, very, very particular in what I put out there, be it an image, be it an answer to a question on Reddit, the punctuation is correct. I'm kind of a stickler for that stuff because you never know, because it reflects on you and how you do things in general, right? And so I think one thing that really helped me, kind of go from just this kind of steady line to this, to where we are, and hopefully we just keep going, right, is putting in that best effort every single day, even when you could probably deliver a mediocre product and people would be totally happy with it because they don't know any better.
But you will know.
I know.
Yep.
I know. And I have clients all the time say, well, can't you just, like do it a little easier, more quickly? I'm like, no, that is not the way to do it. That is not how I want to go through life and present myself to the world. So I think that's been something that I've been a stickler on and really serious about and continue to do. It doesn't mean you can't have fun and do crazy things and stuff like that, but just in your work and what you're putting out there, it needs to be as good as you can do it.
Josh, that was inspirational. Thank you.
Thank you.
And hopefully InflateAlite inflates.
Hopefully.
Continues to inflate.
Hopefully so. It's, all we can do is do our best and hope that we've got a winner and that it translates to bigger and better things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So look, all right. First off, I want to thank Josh Bryan for being on the show. That was awesome talking to him. Incredible story. I loved it. Tell me what your favorite part was. If you watched it on YouTube, which I really hope you did, or at least Spotify, you will have seen the awesome lighting. You also would have seen his camera kind of flutter in and out. That continues to be a thing I struggle with end on end. And the funny thing is, when you're setting up the shot, I can't even talk today. When you're setting up the shot, you have to get close to the little monitor, the preview thing on the camera itself. And I can't actually see close. I need to bring my reading glasses. But at some point, he was in frame. I got to get it ironed out. It bugs the hell out of me. Also, if you want to follow him, go to InflateAlite, just like it sounds, on social media, on Instagram. You get linked directly to his website. And it's funny because Arcus Foundry, which obviously sponsors this podcast, said, hey, Jay, we have this awesome teleprompter that we're working on. And I go, I don't want it. And he's calling me out because I'm always looking, I'm always reading. I kind of like reading this. I think reading this is better than a canned close. Plus, if I were to move the camera back, I wouldn't be able to read the text on the teleprompter because, like I just said, I can't read anymore. So with that being said, I want to thank Right Honda and Right Toyota, Spark Forge, Arcus Foundry, the aforementioned, Auto Canada, officially licensed Honda and Acura gear, Patreon business supporters, Kuya Automotive out of Winter Garden, Florida, Automotive Specialty Tool out of Owings Mills, Maryland, The Shaping Success Treasure Valley out of Boise, Idaho, The Lucky Break Sports Breakers out of Caledonia, Michigan, and Big House Small Home Design out of Ashburn, Virginia, and Traverse City, Michigan. I did mention West Tankersley. I did mention Boise, Idaho. Catch Wes and I every Wednesday at One Drink Wednesday on Instagram. Even if you don't, go ahead and go over there and give us a follow. We're trying to get up to 1,000 so that we can go live again from that page. Last year, around August, Instagram said, hey, if you don't have 1,000 followers, you can't go live. And so Wes goes live from his page, and I join him from the One Drink Wednesday page. But it would be nice if we could go live originally from the One Drink Wednesday page. And we can do interviews and all sorts of cool stuff. So check us out. If you want to help the podcast upgrade, go to Patreon, Hard Parking Podcast. But none of you ever do, other than Mark Stoneman, Catherine Cox, A. Ramos, Richard Graves, Byron Jones, Bo Jung, Alex Camina, Drew Bunkley, and Dre Mullins. Thank you for financially supporting the show. Questions, comments, or concerns, info@hardparking.com. Follow me on social media at hardparkingpod on Instagram. Also want to get to 1,000. I'll talk to you all next week.
Shut up!